Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Phillips. I have the privilege to be the Minister of Environment and Parks in the Cabinet of Premier Rachel Notley. First, I would like to acknowledge that we're making this announcement today on Treaty 6 territory. Thank you, too, to the TELUS World of Science for hosting this announcement. Climate change is very much a science-based issue, and it is a science that our government respects. That is why we are here. It is especially heartwarming to have so many champions of climate change with us here today. First among them are, of course, Premier Notley, Murray Edwards, Chairman of Canadian Natural Resources Limited, Ed Whittingham, Executive Director of the Pembina Institute, and the Chair of Alberta's Climate Change Advisory Panel, Dr. Andrew Leach. And with us are people and organizations who have long called for action on climate change. Steve Williams of Suncor, Brian Ferguson of Cenovus, Lorraine Mitchell-Moore of Shell, Dan Vonolovich, Clean Energy Canada, Karen Mann, Forest Ethics, Tim Gray, Environmental Defence, Stephen Guilbeault, Équiterre, Grand Chief Tony Alexis of the Treaty 6 First Nation. We are also joined by 3 students who were supposed to be going to Paris, and I want to recognize them here today for their hard work. Welcome Anna Goplin, Autumn Jang, Pamela Masabo from the Centre for Global Education. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday to show your support. I'd like to now welcome Grand Chief Alexis to the mic for a minute to say a few words.
Good afternoon and welcome to Treaty 6 territory. Today is a historic event for us in the province of Alberta. We are now in a place where industry, government, and First Nation can move forward together on climate change. As Grand Chief of Confederacy of Treaty 6, it is important that the province move ahead not only with leadership in First Nations of Treaty 6, but also with leadership in nations of Treaty 7 and Treaty 8. I am encouraged that the province and recently elected federal government have made commitments towards the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Strengthening treaty relationships is central to the declaration. Our treaty partners include Canadians, the private sector, and the governments. This provides us with a framework to move forward with you in partnership on climate change. Work on climate change continues in the sciences and other fields. Indigenous people have also been working. In the last few months, I have attended climate-related events, including Indigenous-led consultations in Edmonton and the U.S. I spoke at the Edmonton International Film Festival screening This Changes Everything, with 7 stories of climate change. One of the stories is about Beaver Lake Cree Nation and features Crystal Lehman, who is present here today. We see the impacts of climate change. We are experiencing them. For example, consuming traditional food rejuvenates our custom, language, and traditions. However, one of the impacts of climate change is that we are losing trust in our traditional foods and at the health of our environment. One of our missing Indigenous women, Misty Potts, from my community, conducted a study in this regard with a focus on contamination of moose. We are in the heart of the impacts of climate change. The way forward is simple, but not easy. We must strengthen our treaty relationships and honor our commitments, roles, and responsibilities further to the UN Declaration and other human rights frameworks in setting our agenda on climate change. We have already compromised the future of our children and grandchildren. How we move forward together will decide what happens to them and to Mother Earth.
I am honored to be part of a government that is so dedicated to doing the right thing for climate change. Meaningful action in Alberta was long overdue. So Premier Notley acted quickly to bring leadership to an issue that is vital to the health of our communities. It has been 6 months since our government was sworn in, and we now have a plan to address this issue, which is the single greatest threat to our health and to our economy. Premier Notley has a vision for Alberta that is healthy and prosperous, and that is a leader in environmental stewardship and enjoys sustained economic growth, steady job creation, and a great quality of life. Premier Notley sees leadership on climate change as essential to achieving that vision and to be Alberta's continuing importance as a global energy producer. Tomorrow, the Premier takes that commitment to Alberta's climate change leadership to Ottawa, and the next week to Paris. Today, she will outline Alberta's climate change leadership plan to you and to all Albertans. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Premier Rachel Notley.
Well, my friends, this is a very proud and important day for Alberta. First of all, because there's going to be a great football game later this afternoon. And secondly, because this is the day that we set a better course for our economic future. This is the day we start to mobilize capital and resources to create green jobs, green energy, green infrastructure, and a strong, environmentally responsible, sustainable, and visionary Alberta energy industry with a great future. This is the day we step up, at long last, to one of the world's biggest problems, the pollution that is causing climate change. This is the day we stop denying there is an issue, and this is the day we do our part. Our goal is to become one of the world's most progressive and forward-looking energy producers. In this, we are turning the page on the mistaken policies of the past. Policies that have failed to provide the leadership our province needed. Instead, we are going to act to protect the health of our children. We are going to do our part to address one of the world's greatest problems. And we are going to put capital to work, investing in new technologies, better efficiency, and new job-creating investments in green infrastructure. And we are going to write a Made in Alberta policy that works for our province and our industries and keeps our capital here in Alberta for our citizens. We're going to get this right. So friends, climate change is real. It is caused by human activity, and it requires an effective response. And if you want proof, go and look at the Columbia ice field in Jasper National Park. The amount of ice lost there in the past 100 years is shocking and getting steadily worse. And what are the long-term consequences for Albertans and for our drinking water, our farms and our ranches and our economy if we lose the glaciers that feed so many of our rivers and our streams? The front line of climate change is actually right here in Alberta. The front line of climate change is also on every coast, in every city, on every ocean and lake in the world. And so this is a challenge that we must address. Friends, all Canadians directly benefit from the growth of the energy industry. Hundreds of thousands of well-paying jobs depend directly on energy right across this country. Healthcare, education, and other public services are being financed in good part by the economic growth brought by our energy industry here in Alberta and in every jurisdiction across this country. That is going to continue for many decades to come. But for it to continue, in our role as Canada's principal energy producer, we need to step up to the climate change issue. Thoughtful people in our energy industry, including the industry leaders standing here with me today, have been saying for a long time that we can and we must do a better job. We got a major wake-up call on this a few weeks ago in the form of a kick in the teeth from the government of the United States. Unfairly, in my view, the President of the United States claimed that our production is some of the dirtiest oil in the world. That is the reputation that mistaken government policies of the past have earned for us. We are a landlocked energy producer with a single market that just took a very hard run at us. So we need to do better. And we are going to do better. Last spring, our government appointed an advisory panel chaired by Dr. Andrew Leach from the University of Alberta. He was joined in his work by Linda Cody, Gordon Lambert, Stephanie Carnes, and Angela Adams. This panel, leaders in their fields, have carefully listened to the views of thousands of fellow citizens, and they have given us their best advice on how we can responsibly address climate change. The government of Alberta has benefited enormously from the advice and from the contributions of the many Albertans who took part. Thank you, each and every one of you, and you, for this critically important contribution to our province and to our country. I also want to thank our amazing Environment Minister, Shannon Phillips, for her passion, her dedication, and her commitment on this issue. Shannon, you've inspired us all. So here's what we're going to do. First, Alberta is going to move away from coal and towards clean power. As recommended by the advisory panel, we will implement an accelerated phase-out of coal. We will phase out all coal emissions by 2030. And we will encourage the generation of clean, renewable electricity in its place. Specifically, we will aim to replace 2/3 of our existing coal electricity with renewable energy. We will keep the cost of renewables as low as possible by using market mechanisms such as auctioning. We will work in cooperation with Alberta's electricity generators, with our power regulator, the Alberta Utilities Commission, and the Alberta Electricity System Operator to implement these goals. The government will also appoint a facilitator and negotiator to help us develop and implement this plan. And we will pursue this policy without endangering the reliability of our electricity system, and we will maintain a reasonable stability in prices to consumers and business. We will ensure that workers are not left behind, and we will not unnecessarily strand capital. Second, we're going to reduce pollution by putting a price on it. We all contribute to carbon pollution, and we can all be part of the solution. By we, I mean industry and mining. I mean all of us in our cars. I mean the many ways we currently burn carbon and put it in the atmosphere for our children to breathe. Every jurisdiction in the world needs to act on this issue, and so we are going to do so. By putting a price on pollution, we will create a market-based economic incentive to reduce it and to invest in alternatives. As recommended by our climate change panel, Alberta will be phasing in a $30 per ton economy-wide carbon price. Alberta's new carbon price will be implemented in 2 steps. We will implement a $20 economy-wide price in January of 2017, and then a $30 price in January of 2018. Like the plans being implemented in California and Quebec, the carbon price will apply a performance-based standard to emitters, but unlike those systems, all the capital will remain in our province. This carbon price will be adjusted to keep pace with the prices and growth, taking into account what our peer jurisdictions and competitors are doing. We will put every penny raised through the carbon price to work here in Alberta, building our economy, creating jobs, and doubling down on our efforts to reduce pollution and promote greater efficiency throughout our province. The Alberta carbon price will therefore be revenue neutral, fully recycled back into the Alberta economy. To that end, revenue will be reinvested directly into measures to reduce pollution, including clean research and technology, green infrastructure like public transit, to help finance the transition to renewable energy, and efficiency programs to help people reduce their energy use. Revenue from Alberta's new carbon price will also be invested into an adjustment fund. This fund will help individuals and families make ends meet as this new policy is implemented. This adjustment fund will also provide transition help to small business, to First Nations, and to people working in the coal industry. As our emissions go down, so ultimately will the funds collected. We do not want the government to become dependent on these revenues. When our economy is back on its feet, though, we can consider whether there is any role for some of these funds to help pay down public debt, but not before that. I'm very excited to be standing here with leaders from our energy industry and leaders from civil society engaged in environmental issues. Teaming up to tackle major challenges is the Alberta way, and we are going to build a better future together, the Alberta way. On the advice of these leaders from both industry and civil society, our government will introduce an overall oil sands emissions limit. Our oil sands currently generate approximately 70 megatons of carbon a year. We will legislate an overall emissions limit of 100 megatons, plus a provision for new upgrading and cogeneration. The simple fact is this: Alberta can't let its emissions grow without limit, but we can grow our economy by applying technology to reduce our carbon output per barrel, and that is what this limit will promote. I'm hopeful that these policies taken overall will lead to a new collaborative conversation about Canada's energy infrastructure on its merits, and to a significant de-escalation of conflict worldwide about the Alberta oil sands. Let me highlight two further elements of our program. Our government will act to reduce methane emissions. Acting effectively on this issue will contribute very substantially to the emissions reductions we are looking for, not far from the reductions that we will achieve from phasing out coal. And last but not least, we will implement an energy efficiency program. Alberta, as I have said many times before, is the only jurisdiction in Canada without such a program, and it can make a fundamental contribution to our overall emissions reductions. Taken together, these policies will bend the curve of Alberta's emissions and allow us to stabilize and begin to reduce them. Friends, I'm extremely proud of the wide consensus we have achieved on these issues. Government, industry, and civil society in Alberta are coming together. That's how we do things in Alberta. We all know how important these issues are, and we know what a remarkable contribution we can make to both our economic future and to our environment by getting these policies right. Alberta is leading again, my friends. We are releasing the full report of the Climate Change Panel today. I'm inviting all Albertans to read it carefully and to let us know what you think of our proposals as we move forward. And as we undertook to do in a recent set of conversations with our province's Indigenous leaders, we will be undertaking a careful consultation with Alberta First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people on these issues. And we will carefully consult all stakeholders and the public on how these policies will be implemented in the weeks and the months to come. Friends, the Government of Alberta is going to stop being the problem, and we are going to start being the solution. Our government is going to act decisively on these issues so that Albertans go back to the role we should be playing on energy and environmental issues. We are going to be leaders. We are going to be one of the world's most progressive and environmentally responsible energy producers. We will protect the health of our children. We will do our part to address one of the world's biggest problems. We will lay the foundations for jobs and prosperity and a great future for Alberta's energy industry. Alberta gets things done, and we are going to get this done by working together, by making better choices, and by building a better economic and environmental future for us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier Notley. Our next speaker is Murray Edwards, Chairman of Canadian Natural Resources Limited, and he will provide a few comments. Murray.
Thank you, Premier Notley. Thank you, Minister Phillips. I provide a few comments on behalf of the industry, but first I just want to deal with one little sort of elephant in the room. The Premier just talked about it briefly, but it's a football game today. And so before we came down here, we had a meeting, and in the room I asked the Premier who do you think is going to win today, Edmonton or Calgary? And being the very astute politician, she said, I don't think I'm going to answer that one. But I think much like the province today, no matter who wins today, Edmonton or Calgary, Alberta will win and will have a team in the Grey Cup. And the same thing, Alberta wins today with this announcement. So I think this is symbolic in that regard. So thank you. Now, on behalf of the industry, I'd like to say that today's announcement is a significant step forward for Alberta and for the industry. Speaking on behalf of Canadian Natural and my colleagues from Suncor, Cenovus, and Shell, we want to say we appreciate the strong leadership taken today by Premier Notley, her staff, and her government in this announcement. There are ambitious announcements being made today and targets set forward for the industry at a challenging time for the oil and gas industry. But the framework announced today will allow the ongoing innovation, technology, investment, and growth in the oil and gas industry at the same time we are looking to reduce our overall carbon emissions. In this way, we will do our part to address climate change while protecting jobs and industry competitiveness in Alberta. The industry has seen the results of working together. So much like we work today with stakeholders, the government, we've also worked together in the industry the last number of years on environmental matters. A number of years ago, we created an industry group called Canadian Oil Sands Innovation Alliance, or commonly known as CASIA, in which the industry worked together in pooling technology and innovation to find ways to deliver improved environmental performance, reduce costs, and increase productivity. And the industry is committed to do more of that. Today's announcement is exciting because it demonstrates what can be achieved when people work together with different perspectives, with a spirit of cooperation, a spirit of collaboration, and a focus on finding solutions. We are now working together, all those groups, to realize the full value provided by the oil and gas industry, including the economic benefits and government revenues that are derived from it, in a way that addresses climate change. The plan, as announced today by the Premier relating to the oil and gas industry, will put a cap on overall emissions by the oil sands. But this plan recognizes the need for the balance between the environment and the economy, one that should provide greater predictability for both the industry and the province on a go-forward basis. This plan will enhance Alberta's global reputation in a responsible, innovative, and a collaborative place to do business. And this plan will position Alberta, one of the world's largest oil and gas producing jurisdictions, as a climate leader. And it will allow for ongoing innovation and technology in the oil and gas sector as we move down a path to growing our emissions with a cap on, growing our production with a cap on emissions. So once again, I would like to congratulate the Premier, her staff, and the government for recognizing the collaborative role the industry and environmental NGOs play today in forging a new path forward for Alberta and Canada. On behalf of Canadian Natural Resources, my colleagues from Suncor, Cenovus, and Shell, we applaud Premier Notley for getting us to provide a position of leadership on climate policy. We have the province, the industry has a bright but challenging future ahead. But if we work together collaboratively, we think we can achieve those goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Murray. Finally, we're going to hear from Ed Whittingham, the Executive Director of the Pembina Institute. Mr. Whittingham, the microphone is yours.
Premier, Minister, first off, congratulations, and thank you for asking the Pembina Institute and my colleagues from the environmental movement to be part of this historic day here in Alberta. And a special... Sure! What I wanted to say is a special shout out to the young people I see seated right in front of the stage here. You probably want to be outside where the fun things are, instead of listening to us go on and on and on. But you being here reminds me of my own kids, Beck and Alice, who just might be watching the webcast back home. And a big part of what we've done and the work that led up to today was for you. All right? So thank you for being here. So back in the spring, Premier Notley, you promised Albertans leadership on the issue of climate change. 6 months later, you, Minister Phillips, and your government have delivered. Today, Alberta takes its rightful place as a leader on the world stage. Your Made in Alberta Climate Leadership Plan positions our province to be a global leader on climate change. Phasing out coal-fired electricity and ensuring renewable electricity is a big part of the replacement generation is perhaps the most important thing that the world can do to avoid dangerous climate change. Your plan does that with its 2030 goal while providing for the transition of our province's coal workers and their home communities and ensuring stability of prices to consumers and businesses. And let's not forget, eliminating air pollution is important for our health, everyone's health. The Climate Leadership Plan also puts a meaningful economy-wide price on carbon, giving all Albertans the incentive to reduce their household emissions. This is one of the most effective ways of reducing greenhouse gas pollution that causes climate change. The revenue we generate will allow us to invest in green infrastructure, public transit, energy efficiency, and clean energy R&D. All the things we need to do our fair share and stay competitive globally as the world transitions to a low-carbon future. Your plan will also strengthen the competitive position of Alberta's oil and gas companies through a polluter pays system that stimulates innovation and creates a global center for low-carbon technology. The oil sands emissions limit will give the world certainty that our emissions will not grow unchecked. It's a game changer and will change the debate about the oil sands industry doing its part to address climate change. So in short, the Climate Leadership Plan is a robust, is comprehensive, and is the right thing to do for our environment, for our economy, for our health, and for our long-term prosperity of all Albertans. And the fact that we have environmental leaders and industry executives together on stage, these unlikely allies, shows the power of the plan, especially in light of the level of conflict we've seen over the past several years around Alberta's oil sands. Premier Notley, you have the support of those of us here on the stage today. We'll keep our sleeves rolled up, knowing that there is still hard work ahead. The world needs more of this kind of leadership from major energy-producing jurisdictions if we are to avoid dangerous climate change and grow our economies. On behalf of all of us, thank you, Premier, for your bold leadership.
This concludes our program for today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your dedication on this matter, and I look forward to working with all of you for a brighter future for Alberta, where we exercise climate leadership. Thank you.